my absolute pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Rene Syler. Rene Syler knew she wanted a career in television. Unfortunately, she did not come to that realization until after she had spent thousands of dollars on a degree in psychology. She forged ahead, and after reporter anchor jobs in Reno, Birmingham, and Dallas, landed a plum assignment as one of the anchors of The Early Show on CBS. It was there Rene capitalized on her natural curiosity. In March 2007, Rene's first book, Good Enough Mother, the perfectly imperfect book of parenting, was published by Simon Schuster. From that, her website, goodenoughmother.com, was born. Rene is a sought-after commentator for CNN Headline News, The Today Show, and The Doctors. She hosted Sweet Retreats, which highlights vacation homes for rent, airing on the Live Well Network. Rene also spent several seasons as host of Exhale on Magic Johnson's Aspire Network. Rene is the daughter of 2 breast cancer survivors. Her parents' diagnoses and her own pre-cancerous condition led to her preventive mastectomy in 2007, a surgery that was profiled on the Oprah Winfrey Show. That experience also ignited her passion as she now travels the country as an ambassador for Susan G. Komen for the Cure, spreading the word about early detection and treatment of the disease. Rene was also awarded the prestigious Gracie Allen Award for her television series on breast cancer. And we're so grateful that she's here today sharing her story with us. And she will also be our MC and She Recovers in Miami in a few weeks. So please take it away, Rene. I'm going to spotlight you.
Thank you for everybody who's here in attendance and for the She Recovers community. I'm going to just tell you right now, this is going to be an emotional talk. And I'm like, haven't even started. Even when Kelly was just reading my intro, I was like trying not to cry. But one of the things that I am embracing is this opportunity to feel every single thing that I'm feeling and to not be ashamed by it. So I'm not going to be ashamed when I come to you and things make me tear up or feel very emotional. And it just is what it is. We're going to all go with it. Okay. Before I get into my talk, if I could just sit with you guys for a second, just a couple seconds, and have you take a few deep breaths, because I really want to speak to you as a conduit. This is not a story about me. I'm just a conduit, and I really would like you to take a moment to sit with this where you are, wherever you are, and just get in the moment. So let's just take a couple seconds to take a couple deep breaths. Just calm down a little bit and get in the space. We're going to learn from each other and we're going to support each other. Thank you. I want to talk to you a little bit about how I got here. And by here, I mean in this alcohol-free lifestyle. And I'm not an expert. I don't come to you as an expert. I come to you as someone who's coming alongside you, sharing information with you, learning from you, taking that information, using it for myself, and sharing so that we can all grow and learn together. So please understand that the things that I'll share with you are the mechanisms that I have utilized so far. I know there are many more, but they are where I am right now, and they have helped me get to this place. So let me just dive into how I got here. I grew up in Sacramento, California. Actually, it was Fair Oaks, California. And I was the oldest child of two. I was the oldest daughter. And there we are on the right. We were smack dab in the middle of middle class. And that's my youngest sister, Tracy. As you can see, she's a trust but verify kind of person. Even as a child, she was kind of wary. But we were really, like I said, very middle class. We were the first Black family to move into our neighborhood. And I think sometimes back on that time, so this would have been right around, I was born in 63, I'm 59 years old. And so I think about what that must have been like for my parents, my father, who was trying to care for his family, but also facing, the racism of the time, and being the first Black family in the neighborhood, and what must that have been like, and the stress that came along with that. I put the picture on the right there just to show you how tragic that moment growing up in the 70s was, because who wears knee socks with moccasins? Our mother put us in knee socks and moccasins. And yeah, so as you could see, this was us sort of feeling our way through growing up in Fair Oaks, California. I look back on that time and I feel like I had almost a magical childhood. The things that I remember were very, it was just such a wonderful upbringing. Our parents were present even though they were facing their own challenges. But my father came from a family of alcoholics. And obviously back when I was a child, I didn't recognize his behaviors as damaging or dangerous. But when I look back on them now, I obviously can see that. So he was he would go to work every day. I guess you would characterize him as a functioning alcoholic, where he did get up and go to work every day, but he definitely was what you would characterize as an alcoholic. We grew up in Fair Oaks, California. I went to college in Fair Oaks. I went to, I did a community college in Fair Oaks. And then I went on to Sacramento State University, and that's where I graduated from. So again, life was good, stayed intact until my late teens, and then my parents separated, and then my dad passed away in 1985, and my mother sadly just passed away in January, and that was a very difficult time for all of us. I decided after I graduated in psychology, as you heard Kelly say, that psychology really wasn't going to be the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to do television. And I just wished I had thought about that earlier. So I took this sort of circuitous route to get into television. And the upper left corner of your screen, that was me on the set of my first TV job. That was at Channel 2 in Reno, Nevada. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And then I went on to, I went to Birmingham, and then I went to Dallas, and I worked at 2 TV stations in Dallas. And the one on the right there is the second TV station I worked at. And then at the bottom, I had ascended to the network level. And at that point, I really felt like, wow, I have arrived. This is the pinnacle of your professional career, is to be, at the network. That's where everybody's trying to get to. Everything was great for a long time. And I was making more money than I ever imagined I would, until I got fired from my job. And I never tried to hide that. I always felt like, the thing about television is if you haven't been fired, you haven't been working in TV long enough. Everyone gets fired in television at some point. And so the problem was that my firing came as I was going through a lot of other life changes. And part of those life changes were I was having a preventive mastectomy. My mother and father both had breast cancer, and I had made the decision, after having been diagnosed with the stage right before breast cancer, that I was going to have a preventive mastectomy. And I had made that decision in July, August of 2006, and then I got fired in December of 2006. The surgery was already scheduled, everything. So I just went ahead with it. And so I ended up being fired in December. And in January of 2007, I had both breasts removed. Around that time, in 2007, my book, Good Enough Mother, was published. And around that time, I had gone out on a book tour, sort of late 2007. I was touring the country on this book tour. And I ended up getting sick, really, really sick on a plane. And I was hospitalized. And I ended up being pumped full of, prednisone and albuterol and all this stuff that they gave you to cure bronchitis. They thought it was pneumonia, but it was actually bronchitis. And when I got out of the hospital, I was just a wreck. I was physically a wreck. I looked awful. My hair, which I had been relaxing straight for many, many years, all the years that I'd been in television. I got out of the hospital and I went to have it relaxed again, and it fell out. Started right at the crown up here, started to fall out in clumps in my hand, falling into the sink. And I felt like Job, like what else can happen? And it was then that I decided that I wasn't going to put another chemical in my hair. Back then, I needed to, because that's what Black women did who were on television. That was what was expected of Black women on TV. And I just did it because of that. But after I wasn't on TV every day anymore, I said, I'm not really down with this. I don't feel like this looks like me. I don't want to do it anymore. So I didn't. And then when my hair started to grow in, it looked like that. And I was astonished because I actually, for the first time in my life, loved my hair. And it was in part because I wasn't trying to make it be something it wasn't. I was fully accepting me and myself and my hair. And I also had a young daughter at the time, and I was thinking, what kind of example am I giving to her if I'm, beating the hell out of my hair with heat and chemicals? What am I saying about your own natural beauty and what you should be like and appreciate yourself and all of that? So that's when I stopped, and I hated that it took me this long to do it. I've been natural. That was about 2009 was when I made the decision to go natural. And so I've been natural for over a decade now, and I love it. Love, love, love it. After that happened, I wrote my book that Kelly also talked about, Good Enough Mother. And this was my missive to modern motherhood. And it came about because I was seeing and hearing so many women who were treating everybody better in their lives than they were themselves. They were giving everything to everybody else, and there was nothing left for them. And I was trying to figure out, where in the book of motherhood does it say that a good mother has to grind herself into dust for all of these other people? I couldn't understand it. And I really was all about, how about you be as good to you as you are to everybody else? If that means that, the kids are going to have cereal for dinner once in a blue moon, okay. If that meant that you were going to be like, all right, listen, mommy's going to sleep late, you guys take care of yourself. Whatever it looked like, if it meant going out and scheduling time with your girlfriends, or to get a manicure, or to just go sit in your car somewhere alone with the music off and with your thoughts, anything that meant you valued yourself as much as you did all these other people, was why I wrote the book. And I really wanted that message to be heard and to be acted on. And that's why I wrote the book. you know, I jumping forward a little bit to the sober living element. And this is, I realized that, oh, you guys, sorry, there was another slide in here. Here's when I first cut my hair, and then what it turned out to be. Fast forward to where we are now, and me making a decision to live a sober-free, an alcohol-free lifestyle. In October of this year, of 2021, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. My father had diabetes. And so not that I was fully surprised, but I was kind of, because I didn't feel like I looked like your typical diabetic. But my father and the family history was really what was key. And, you know, when you have a family history, it's your chances of getting diabetes are like 40% above the average, which I knew it was above average, but never heard that it was that high. In October, after having a small pity party for myself, I decided that I had to be a party to my own health and well-being. And I had in the past tried to figure out where alcohol was fitting in my life. And it wasn't really working for me anymore. And when I say that, what I mean is that the diabetes diagnosis made me understand that I needed, at this age, and really any age, but at the age I am right now, I needed everything to be working for me. I didn't have the luxury of doing things and engaging in things that were not going to be helping me. And I could honestly look back and say, what good was coming from me drinking? And I couldn't think of a single thing. I couldn't think of a single thing. When I went through kind of a very difficult period of time about 5 years ago, I started, I noticed an uptick in my drinking, and I was a wine drinker. I was not so much anything else, but wine was my jam. And I noticed this uptick in my drinking. It almost became kind of a mindless thing. And when you can buy alcohol from a in a box, you can't really see as the bladder's getting smaller, and you can't really measure your consumption, and it makes it easier to drink mindlessly. So as I was going through this difficult time, I noticed some things. That number one, the drinking only helped for a few minutes, right? So initially it made me feel better, but then 20 minutes later, all of my problems were still here, except now I was less equipped to deal with them. So what I mean by that was I wasn't as sharp. I couldn't think outside the box. It just didn't help. When I drank at night, what happened was I couldn't get up in the morning, the next morning, to go work out. And as we know about type 2 diabetes, you know, physical activity is really critical. So I could trace that lack of physical activity to the drinking, right? Because that was the building block. And then also I started thinking that sugar in wine cannot possibly be helping me as I tried to get a hold of these numbers. And so October was the diagnosis. November was the pity party. You know, October and November, I don't understand why that. And in December, I just was like, you have got to get it together, woman. What the heck is wrong with you? And in December is when I said, you know, you really have to be the conductor of your own health. So let's get it together, woman. And I decided on December 5th that was going to be my last drink. It was a Sunday evening. and I had my last glass of wine, made sure everything was emptied out, and that was it. And so I'm coming up on 4 months alcohol free, and I feel fantastic. You know, I remember reading about a lot of people who were saying things like, oh, all the good things happened in my life when I stopped drinking. And I believe there was a part of me that was like waiting for that magical thing. Like, okay, day one, I'm here. I stopped drinking. Where's all my magical things? But what I have noticed is the magical things are sometimes small and quiet. Like I am more in tune to the things around me and the quiet spaces. I'm more in tune to people. My anxiety level is lower. I feel more equipped to deal with the things that come my way. I've come up with some coping mechanisms. I rarely have any cravings. My thing was less physical and more. And the things that I notice are that when I'm in a place, and it's only happened a half a dozen times maybe, where I felt like I wanted to have a drink. Maybe I was out and there were people drinking or whatever, or sometimes just in a place, in a mood, and you think, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have a glass of wine? My first coping mechanism is wait 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, I stop, I take a couple of deep breaths, and then I think and I remember what will happen if I do this. Number one drink makes a second one easier. 2 drinks today makes tomorrow's drinking easier. And then I'm right back in that cycle that I'm working really hard to get out of. The second thing is, in that time, as I'm getting centered and comfortable and listening to myself, and I know that sounds so new age, you guys, and I'm not that person, but as I become more in tune to me, I understand that that's not really what I want. What I want is what? I want to enjoy this moment. Can you enjoy this moment with a kombucha? Can you enjoy this moment with sparkling water? Yes, because that's the moment, not what's in the glass. It's not, the glass is not the moment. The moment is this. And can I enjoy that without having to imbibe? And the answer is yes. The 10 minutes thing, 10 minutes has never let me down. And for as long as I live, I see that as being my strategy. The cravings or the head, whatever you want to call it, initially were more prevalent, but not so much anymore. I don't feel like I need to protect myself, or that I can't go places, or I can't be around friends who are drinking, because I feel like I have my own, this is my journey. This is what's working for me. And by the way, please let me reiterate that what works for me might not work for you. Maybe you're at a place where you really can't and don't want to be around that. And that's okay too. Because the one thing I am discovering in this is that we're all recovering in different ways. And we may all be moving in the same direction, but the path may not be the same for all of us. And so that's how I have made it this far. And I am thrilled to be here. I'm happy. I wake up in the mornings. I feel great. I feel good. And I feel like I wished I had done this, before this moment, but I'm here now and I'm going to make the most of it.
Thank you so much, Renee. That was beautiful. And I loved learning more about your journey. And thank you for sharing it with us and your photos and everything. That was so beautiful. So if anybody has questions, we have a few, but if anybody has questions, please drop those in the Q&A function on the webinar or in the comment section on Facebook. Okay, so let's get to what we have so far. And this one's from me. I want to acknowledge that your alcohol-free journey began as a health journey. And here at She Recovers, we welcome anyone cutting back or quitting alcohol for any reason. We support all pathways. Have you ever felt like you needed to put yourself in any sort of box when it comes to quitting alcohol and defining your journey?
Any sort of, what did you say, box?
Putting yourself in a box, like with labels or any type of like defining it as addiction, or just you're totally comfortable with calling it the alcohol-free journey? Or have you ever felt pressure to put yourself in that box?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me just go back for a second and say that the health element was the final straw. I had probably in the last couple of years prior to quitting, I had been thinking about, hey, I don't really love the way I'm consuming alcohol. I'm not really keen on that. And I had done these alcohol-free sort of stints, never more than 3 months, but they were always for things like, oh, I want to lose weight. And if you want to lose weight, that's a great way to lose weight, get rid of all those empty calories. But they were always temporary. I went into them knowing they were temporary. I went into them saying, I'm going to do this until I get to this place. And this was the first time, which is one of the reasons that I attribute my strength in the journey to, is that it really wasn't about, let me do this for a period of time. It was, this is my life. And I'm completely fine saying things like, I don't drink, I go out to, and this is a big thing when you go out and the waiter comes over and says, they're taking drink orders, and you order something non-alcoholic and people are like, oh, rah, and you don't have to explain anything. I just say, oh yeah, I don't drink anymore, or I don't drink. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. You just like, I don't drink. But I did, to be honest with you, still feel some kind of way about calling myself, an alcoholic, or being in recovery. It all, I'm still feeling not quite comfortable with those labels. And again, I don't know why. It's just that I know that, and I try to tell people that, like, for me, I didn't have to get to a rock bottom place. I, didn't have to have multiple DUIs or job loss or this, that, and the other. And in order to know that I wasn't happy with the direction I was going, and that I could change at any time. I just didn't feel that these things were helping me achieve the place that I was trying to get to. So that's when I decided to quit.
Wonderful. Yeah. And it's wonderful that you took some breaks before, and you probably had the data from those breaks. Okay, I definitely felt better when I wasn't drinking. So how can I continue this as a part of my life? So that's wonderful. And I'm sure a lot of people in our community share that same type of journey. And actually, one of our intentions and guiding principles is we don't have to hit rock bottom to pursue recovery in any area of our lives. We believe in early intervention. So it just aligns with our community so much. And we know we have women who have walked that same path and will walk that path in the future, come to our community and feel seen.
I have a question for the people in the group. So I had a number of physiological changes that I noticed, along with the mental and emotional, but physically, the first thing was like my skin got whoosh, super clear. Like everything evened out on my face, and my eyes got so bright, like super, like white and bright and amazing. I just didn't know, did anybody else have that? And I was like, and I noticed it the first time I went through this kind of stint where I had stopped drinking, and I was looking in the rearview mirror, and it was like, whoa, look at that. Is the sun shining extra bright? Like, And I have been trying to find out, what is that about? Is that a circulation thing? Is that I couldn't figure it out, but I love it.
Yes, I mean, so me personally, I would say I had that skin clearing and eyes brighter thing. I think for the first few weeks of my sobriety, my face was kind of bloated. So it took a little while to kind of re-regulate. But I would say across the board, our community notices things like that. Maybe not those exact things, but definitely physical changes of some kind. And I'll see if anybody writes in the chat anything specific that they want to share about it. But yeah, I think that's very much normal and beautiful to see. So I'm glad that happened for you, especially. Okay, so we do have another question from a viewer. Can you talk a little bit more about the Good Enough Mother concept and your book?
Sure. So I was, I told you that I had lost my mother in January, and she was an amazing person. And I always say she was my first example of what it meant to be good enough mother. And when I came up with the idea and the concept, the problem was I was living in a place in Chappaqua, New York, where I had seen there were a lot of moms who didn't work, and their job was to provide every single element of trying to make these perfect lives for their children. And I was a working mom in Chappaqua, and there were a lot, not like them. So there were a lot of things that ended up like either falling through the cracks or, I just I can remember one time coming in from the early show, and I had a driver because I lived outside of Manhattan, and I know that sounds I know you guys, you're all like, oh, she had a driver, but listen, it was that time, and it was the network. Anyway, this driver was probably, I don't know, 110 or something, and he was driving really slowly to get me back to the house. I had a driver also because there was no public transportation that early in the morning. I had to be leaving my house at 3:30. So my son was in kindergarten, and there was a big production in kindergarten, and I was racing to get there. And of course, he was driving slow and I was late, and I thought I was going to have a stroke in the backseat of the car. I was like, you've got to go faster. But when I got there, I missed his big line, and I self-flagellated for probably months over it, right? And then the other day I asked him, he's 24 now almost. I said, Cole, do you remember that time when you did that thing in kindergarten and I showed up and I just missed your big line? And he was like, no, not at all. And that was the whole point of all of this, is that, you know what, when you're a mother and you work and all of these things are happening in your life and you're juggling all of these things, you're not going to get them all right. And it's okay. And your kids will be okay. And when they're 24, they're not even going to remember. But for us to be thinking like it has to be perfect for them made no sense to me. My goal as a mother was not to protect my kids from disappointment. It was to teach them how to handle disappointment. And if there was anyone who was going to disappoint them, it was going to be me. No, I'm kidding about that. But they did experience some disappointment with me as a mother, because guess what? I'm human. And sometimes there are things that were out of my control. Sometimes there were things that I just spaced sometimes, but they learned that they know their mother loves them and would do anything she could for them. But also that I needed to be good to me, and in order to be a good mom. I hope that answered her question.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think so needed, and probably very revolutionary at the time when your book came out, because no one was really talking about that back then. And only now, I think, I mean, I just became a mom last year, but I think people, thank you. And I think people are talking about more that moms aren't perfect and we, you know, are humans and we deserve time for ourselves and all of these things. So I think that's such an important thing to have talked about back then. And is there any other specific concepts in your book that you detail about how we can learn to accept being good enough and that's perfect for us?
Yeah. So let me just also, if I could go back before I forget this, I don't know if you guys saw the New York Times article about, do we need an intervention, talking about mommy wine culture. And I am even somewhat disappointed. I shouldn't say disappointed because I didn't know any better back then. And you know better, you do better. But I actually had a chapter in my book called Wine 30, right? And I was part of that. That's what I thought I needed to wind down, was to go out with my girlfriends and have, a pitcher of sangria or a couple bottles of wine or whatever. And that made me better able to cope with the kids because of the wine. And that's just not true. It's really not true. It wasn't true for me anyway. And I think that what we were seeing, and if you guys haven't read the article, it's in the New York Times, and I think it was yesterday. But the numbers were really astonishing about how much women have been drinking, and particularly during the pandemic. And I mean, the pandemic threw us all into a whatever, and we were all looking for ways to cope. So in Good Enough Mother, I felt like I didn't really talk about it much then, but what I feel like needs to happen is we need to be open to better coping skills. I'm not a yoga person, but I did yoga last week for the first time. And I was like, where's this been all my life? The thing that what I started this talk with about being present is that I just needed to be in a space where I could be fully aware. And the drinking was not enabling me to be fully aware. When my mother passed away and we had the memorial service for her, I never wanted a drink because I felt like it was my duty and to honor her by being 100% there and 100% in my feelings for her, which I did. I never wanted to have a drink during any of that. So to answer the question about Good Enough Mother, and I really feel like we've got to find better ways to cope that don't include substance abuse, because ultimately we're harming ourselves, and we're supposed to be being good to ourselves. Can you imagine what your family's life would be like without you? And that was one of the things that I also talked about, was how can your family care for itself if it's the engine that's driving this is not caring for itself? How are you going to take care of your kids if you're, in a bed at a hospital? Stop grinding yourself into the ground. This is crazy.
Yes, that makes total sense. And I just want to say I'm so sorry for the loss of your mother. And we have many people in our community that are in recovery from grief and have lost parents. I lost my father in November of 2020. Dawn, our co-founder, just wrote in the chat that she gets that completely, that her lifelong tribute to her late mother is to remain in recovery. So we definitely understand how you're feeling. And I also think it's so poignant to look back at your book and talk about that chapter and say, now I have a completely different experience and that doesn't work and it's not working for me. And if every person that wrote something about that, like if they wrote something about wine being a good coping mechanism years ago, they could come forward now and be like, oh, you know what? I don't think this is actually the best way.
Wow. And I never thought about that, but you're 100% right. You're absolutely right. Because we reserve a right to change and grow. And so I don't want to beat myself up too much because I just didn't know any better, but I do now. And so when you know better, you really do have a responsibility to do better. And so 100%
Yeah,
right.
when we know better, we do better. And absolutely, I don't think you should beat yourself up for that at all. But it's just wonderful seeing people learning in real time and then sharing their reflections with the world. I mean, I think that's the best any of us can do. And that a lot of people in our community are committed to recovering out loud and saying, I did this before and now it doesn't work for me anymore. And this is what I'm doing now. So that's the beauty of it for sure. Yes. So let me see what other questions.
Dawn said, I love that you cry openly. Dawn, I can't help it. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I have to say that's like been a big thing for me. All my emotions, and please, if you guys are the same way, please tell me I'm not alone, but everything is like right here, just under the surface. And I don't know if that's going to change, if I'm going to get better with that. Maybe this is better. I don't know, but I get to these places where just when you were just reading my intro, I was thinking about being here and being with you guys and sharing this story. And it just makes me so emotional. And I want to be okay with that. I can't help it. So it is who I am, so.
Yes, definitely. And I'm the same way. So you're not alone. And so many other people in our community are. And I remember being a little bit overwhelmed by my emotions in my first year of sobriety. Yes. But I'm still what I consider to be an emotional person who cries frequently. And I've had to do some work on really accepting that and being okay with it. Because we're taught that, don't cry in public or don't cry here. And like, there's appropriate places. But I say everyone should cry when they feel it. I mean, it is a biological response from the body, so definitely don't feel ashamed about that at all.
Right.
And then our co-host Carrie just said in the chat, I forgive myself every time I hear another woman share her truth. And that's just beautiful. Oh. I agree. Awesome. All right. So another question we had was, do you think your alcohol-free journey has contributed to your feelings of being okay with being good enough and being good enough mother?
Not so much, because I was always okay with being good enough and being a good enough mother. I had really worked, my kids always knew that I was, from the moment they were little, I was a working mother. So they always knew that they were going to that mommy had another life, that they were not the only thing in mommy's life. And that was one of the things that I talked about in Good Enough Mother, was that just, I was Rene Syler, and I have been Rene Syler for 59 years. Before any of these people came crashing into my life, I was Rene Syler. I didn't stop becoming Rene Syler just because everybody else came in here. And I felt saddened sometimes. I feel saddened sometimes when I see women who lose themselves in other people and in other, even if it's family, because you don't have to do that. And then all of a sudden, guess what? They grow up and they leave. Whew. And then what? Where are you? What are you doing? What do you want to do? What is it that you put off all these years that you can now go back and explore? And maybe that was part of the reason I was able to really get wholeheartedly into this alcohol-free journey, because I could really focus on, on me. I was certainly at a place where they were all kind of doing their thing and I was doing my thing. But when they all grew up and flew the coop, it's like a whole different life now and a whole different chapter. So I do think it's really important for us, for women to know that, you are still a whole human being, regardless of all these other people. Surely they come in and they enhance your life. That's wonderful. But you were awesome before.
Yes, I think it's so hard. Like I said, I am a new mother. So it's been hard because that's one thing I told myself before I became a mom, that I don't want to lose myself. I want to stay true to who I am. I want to have my career and all these things. But I do understand why the balance is so hard now that I am a
Mhm.
mom, because I said all those things before. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it is so hard because, there's only so much time in a day and all those things. But I think it's important to know that you're worth it and that you're allowed to have a separate
Mhm.
life and interests, and you're allowed to ask for help, and you're allowed to send your child to daycare if that works for you. And all of these things, you don't have to balance everything, and that you don't get some sort of award if you're balancing everything and making yourself feel bad in the process.
I
So
think I think part of it comes from we pay too much attention to the people outside of our homes instead of the ones that you should parent for the ones inside the
yes,
home, not the ones
yes,
outside the home. And what happens is that we end up with the what will people think? Who cares? Who cares what they think? Are they raising your kids?
right,
Like,
right,
and
exactly.
we get to this point where we really are too consumed with Pinterest parenting. Don't
Agreed.
just don't do it.
Agreed. Yes. And I think how you explained it is just a testament to the fact that because you were so secure in your good enough mother identity and just being like good enough and that's perfect for you, it probably enabled you to be able to partake in this alcohol free journey and really stick with it and make a commitment to it, which is beautiful.
I really do think, I think certainly as we age, you really start to care less about what everybody else thinks.
Yes.
And, I really just don't care what everybody else thinks. I need to do the things I need to do for me. I can't be worried about, first of all, there are a whole group of people out there who want to just hate just to hate. Why would you
Agreed.
spend
Yes.
why would you spend 2 seconds worried about them? They're not going to change your mind, even if you were handing out diamonds. So why? Well, that's all of that is just time wasted. And it's better utilized for the way that you can parent you're the best parent for your children. You're the one who knows best to do what works for you and them. And I can't with the whole, worrying about everybody else. Life is too short for that.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of the judgment that is passed on mothers sometimes comes from other mothers and maybe some sort of insecurity that they have or something that they wish they could do and can't, or whatever it may be. So I always keep that in mind if that comes my way. But
Mhm.
yes, I'm working on that for sure. Now, as I'm sure a lot of other women in our community are, like, not worrying about what other people think at all, especially when it comes to parenting.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So what are you looking forward to most as the MC of our She Recovers in Miami event?
First of all, I'm thrilled that you guys asked me to be a part of this. I've known Susan Carter for, I just can't say how many years, because then I'd be well, I already told you my age, but she's 24. So I've known her for 24 years. But I have known her and loved her for a very long time. And when we talked about this, I have not really come out and talked about alcohol-free living before. And the reason was, I'm going to share with you that I didn't think I could stick with it. I didn't know if I wanted to stick with it. I didn't know if I could. I just wasn't sure. And then I didn't want to let people down or to, what have you. When Susan and I talked about this, I sort of privately told her I was doing this thing. And then she asked me, would I want to come join you guys in Miami and MC? And I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm going to talk about it now. So here I am talking about it. So, you know what I'm really looking forward to? I'm looking forward to being around a community of like-minded women. There's something about sharing an experience with that you can speak a shorthand, and you don't need to go into all the details. You don't need to, it doesn't, you can just be. And so I'm really super looking forward to that and really excited about that. I'm excited to hear about other people's coping strategies and skills as I move forward. And just wanting to hug a bunch of necks and just excited to be with you guys.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're so excited too. And I mean, I can honestly say that's always what happens in the presence of any She Recovers event or community. And we do a pretty good job of it virtually in our gatherings and stuff too, of just connecting with like-minded individuals. But there's nothing like hugging people in real life and just people that get it, you know, that have been on this journey, whether we're recovering from grief or anxiety or depression or all of the above, or just starting our alcohol-free journey. So that's wonderful. I'm excited too. Awesome. So do you want to share with us what you're up to anytime these days? What do you have any projects that you're working on recently that you want to share with us?
So I kind of didn't talk about it, but I went from a journalist to being a social media influencer. So I do work with brands. I do work with, so I was just out in Los Angeles with Infinity and driving the QX60. Which is a brand new vehicle they have, and it's beautiful, but it's made for, you know, people like us in this age and this, I mean, not my age, a little bit younger, but so I do that. I feel like right now what's important to me is work with brands and projects that are integrated into my life, which is why this was an important thing to be a part of for me. It carries more weight when it's authentic, obviously. And so I'm looking for the brands that I pair up with are authentic. They're authentic pairings that fit in my life. And then I get things out of it, like with She Recovers. Like I said, I can't wait to be there. First of all, hello sunshine, but in Miami, but also just like, what can I learn? What can I take away? What will help me as I go forward? So yeah, that's what I do. I create content for my own site, Good Enough Mother. I'm also doing, I'm launching a deardiabetes.com or .net rather, deardiabetes.net, because I learned so much in the diabetes journey, even like things that I didn't know, that periodontal disease and diabetes go hand in hand. And there were so many things that I was learning about that. Ultimately, what I find is that I am a creator and I am an informer. So I create content and then I share content, and that it's important to me that content be real, authentic, helpful, because that's part of my stock and trade. And so that's what I do.
Wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like fun and also educational, and like you're doing good things in the world with your stories, and that's amazing. And we're so honored that you shared with us today and that you're a part of this amazing conference that we're going to have at the end of this month. We can't wait. So thank you for coming on today. I'm going to wrap up. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time and your heart and your experience. And thank you to everyone who makes this series possible. And most importantly, thank you to all of our viewers for showing up today and holding space and bringing forward your questions. We truly are stronger together. Our signature conference, She Recovers in Miami, will be held April 22nd to the 24th. To reserve your ticket for the virtual event, please visit sherecovers.org/Miami virtual and register today. We can't wait to see you all there or inside of the virtual platform. To learn more about Mental Health Monday and all of our upcoming sessions, please visit sherecovers.org/Mental Health Mondays. For more information about She Recovers Foundation and all of our recovery-focused programs, resources, and touchpoints, please visit sherecovers.org. Thank you so much, everyone.